All right, good morning, everybody. Morning. Thank you all for coming. Thanks to my parents for filling in some seats for me here. So I'm Andy Armanis with Datex. This session is called Building a Roadmap for WMS Evolution. And I think that's exactly what a lot of teams are trying to do nowadays. So let me start with a question. How many of you feel like your operations have become more complex over the last few years? Right? So more customers, more requirements, more pressure to move faster. So now the real question is, has your WMS been able to keep up with that complexity, or are you trying to work around it? Because what we see across the market is this. Most WMSs don't actually fail, believe it or not. They just quietly become the bottleneck. So not all at once, right? Maybe one workaround at a time, one integration that takes too long, one customer requirement that ends up being harder than it really should be. So until eventually the system that was supposed to enable your business is actually starting to limit it. So when that happens, companies usually go down one of two paths. They try to keep extending what they have, or they realize they've really hit a ceiling and probably have to replace it. But increasingly, there's really a third path. What it looks like when your platform can actually evolve with your business. So to unpack this, excuse me. So to unpack this, we have three very different and very relevant perspectives. Joining me on stage is Hill Hamrick, CEO of Central Storage and Warehouse, who's led a 3PL through this very transition and is operating on the other side of it today. Glenn Lopresti, CEO and co-founder of Tact, an AI-powered warehouse intelligence platform, who sees firsthand what's possible across different environments and where things tend to break down. And last but not least, a lot of you know Dwight Klapik, spent over 25 years at Gartner covering WMS and supply chain tech, and he conducted more than 12,000 client briefings. And he's seen firsthand where platforms succeed and where they hit their limits. So you'll hear this from three different angles, and where those perspectives line up is when things start really to get interesting. So we're gonna go through this in really two parts. So how Hill extended his operation by layering in new capabilities like Tact, then how the WMS platform allowed him to expand and grow the business. So we'll close where all this is heading. You know, I'm sure on top of everyone's mind as AI becomes part of the daily conversation. All right, so let's get cooking. So Glenn, I'm gonna start with you. So when companies begin looking at something like Tact, what are they usually missing in their operations? What are they looking for?
Got it. This is an easy one. It generally comes down to something as simple as I've got to get more out of what I've got. The systems that I've got, the operation that I've got, and it usually starts from a place where I have 18 different systems that are moving goods through my warehouse. I've got to look at 18 different places to be able to make decisions. And ultimately, at the end of the day, all I'm trying to do is operate a more efficient operation, move goods through the operation more effectively, lower my costs, and if you want a little asterisk next to it, I'd also love to better engage the front line. But doing so when you've got this suite of 10, 20 different applications is a tough starting spot, especially when I'd say that the one other thing I would add is I also don't want to do this over the next 18 to 24, 36 months. I really want to be able to start driving improvement immediately, and I need to be able to start realizing some of those efficiencies and cost savings to forward fund some of the larger capital expenditures that I might want to be able to make.
Mm-hmm. Hill, would you agree with what Glenn is saying?
Yeah, we came to this scary revelation 2 or 3 years ago when we determined that we had what I would call a tech dump. We had a WMS is our core piece of our core technology. It was really good at what it did, but we had all these gaps around our internal operations, particularly understanding what's going on in our warehouse on a day-to-day basis. And we love to think like we're unique and special, and our customers are too. And so every different process in our warehouse, our team would tell you, oh, well, you got to do this a little bit different. You got to do this a little bit different. And this takes slightly longer, and this takes a little bit less time. And then, we did our best to have Excel spreadsheets and formulas and downloads to try to help our team really understand what was happening day to day in the warehouse. And it didn't work. It took too much time. Our warehouse team, bless their hearts, found ways to, avoid certain types of work, but gravitate towards others. And so we really needed something that was very specific to how we operated, how our customers require us to operate, and provided us really quick, useful, reliable insights, but then integrates with the rest of our technology so that we could truly actually understand what's going on and then make our business better on a repeatable basis.
Yeah, thanks, Hill. So from where we sit at Datex, we hear this story quite a bit. I don't know if this resonates with you guys or if you experience some of the same things that Hill was describing. So Hill, can you walk us through what this implementation of TACT actually looked like for you?
So we knew we needed some sort of labor management tool that really captured the different standards of everything that happened in our warehouse, but we knew it had to be extremely flexible and customizable, and something that we, a 5-warehouse cold storage 3PL operator in Wisconsin can manage ourselves without a huge tech team or a ton of head count required from a spin perspective. And so we found TACT, a software specifically built for this type of application. And then with Datex, our WMS, we were able to use APIs and really embrace the architecture that Datex had built that was very API forward in a way that, it was a matter of days, honestly, to build the API, and then a matter of, days to train our team. And now it's completely self-service and up and running. So almost no real tech effort because of how API centric both Datex is than TACT.
So that was actually my follow-up. So you mentioned APIs and building things. That sounds complicated. So it really wasn't. We're talking really on the magnitude of days rather than a heavy development lift.
Well, all APIs are complicated to me, but my tech team said it was very straightforward and seamless. But yeah, it was a matter of days, and the systems fit really nicely together. And in particularly, the best part about it is that we didn't need this full-blown, month-long standard out-of-the-box implementation. Like, it was very specific to the data that needed to flow from our, core database, our Datex database, to the TACT API to make TACT relevant to what we did and to have Datex inform that. But it was very, very specific and customizable to exactly what we need, and didn't take extra work or overbuilt implementations. And so I think that was one of the main reasons it was so quick.
So just to highlight that, so we're not talking development that takes months or weeks. We're talking days. Pretty impressive. Glenn, just back to you. How would this same implementation look like in a more rigid environment?
Yes, that is not always the way that it goes down. There's a benefit to being able to work with systems of record, Datex, that have the modern approaches to data interaction and things like that. We candidly have customers that have 12 different WMSs, 17 different time card systems, and they can range from modern cloud-based API-driven interactions to an AS400 that's been around for 3 decades that's still sitting in the corner. And if you're going to drive decision-making, not just visibility and dashboards, but if you're going to drive decision-making, you have to have access to every bit of information that is moving goods through the warehouse, inclusive of automation, right? We can't assume that humans are the only folks that are moving goods through these warehouses anymore. And when you have the ability to make an easy, modern technical connection with good, accurate data, I think it makes all the difference in the world. The long pole in the tent, 100% of the time, is can you get us the data, right, in a format we're very flexible, but at the same time, just getting the data out of where it's coming from is in many cases the long pole in the tent, and obviously that wasn't the case working with Hill and Datex.
You guys seen that in terms of implementation of TACT, where you guys will have to absorb the brunt of the complexity, or is that just something you push back onto the WMS?
A little of both.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, most folks, if you get beyond what I would consider to be, hey, we have the data, we can take it, and you don't have to conform to a specific data schema. But when you get stuck and just physically or functionally can't get the data out of your systems, our customers tend to do one of two things. Either have a significant IT lift internally to be able to figure out how to just generate the reports. And believe me, we take it via email if that's the way that you can get it out. But even that is a heavy lift. And the alternative to an internal team spending a ton of time tends to be a third-party consulting company that's going to charge $10,000, $100,000 to be able to come in and make the necessary modifications to your data to be able to pull it out.
And I'll just jump in there.
Yeah.
We've been a Datex customer for a while, and Datex's old kind of legacy product, was more traditional within the industry, and so we evaluated, applications like TACT or other things, and it's a really scary feeling, as a mid-sized company, we don't really have many choices. Like, either we have to spend a bunch of money on a third-party consultant or spend a bunch of money with our Datex developers, likely to get, a long, lengthy timeline and a suboptimal outcome. And so we just don't do it. But that doesn't feel good either. Like you're just watching the world pass you by, and that's a really scary feeling. And so it's vastly different now, like having this API architecture that the Datex WMS offers now lets us do these things in a matter of days. And so we've now done, another 10 similar, not this use case, but 10 similar API connections,
yep.
All of which are a matter of days, all of which we maintain with our 5-person tech team without adding substantial headcount. But now we feel like we actually have the opportunity to take advantage of, all the things that are out there in the world. And as, applications in the industry progress, we feel like we're actually able to participate because of how our core warehouse management system tool is set up to embrace it.
So I don't mean to open up old wounds, but just quickly, how would this same thing have looked with the legacy or other platforms that you had previously?
I mean, we just wouldn't have done it. It would have taken, it would have been a 6-figure implementation that would have eaten up our team's bandwidth to actually make sure it was proper, and then it would have taken a lot of time to maintain it. And so it would have been, something in the 6-figure range and a timeline where it's just unsustainable for us. So we just wouldn't have done it. We would have just kept powering through with, good old spreadsheets and sheer will.
I appreciate the honesty. Dwight, I don't mean to keep leapfrogging you here. Any comments before we kind of shift gears a little bit?
No, I think this is an issue that we saw with a lot of our clients. Is you probably heard this notion of building a universal, data structure. A lot of people, hey, once I could render it, I could do all sorts of great things. Then you found out building that universal data model was really hard. Mm-hmm. And one thing we know is there's lots of data in warehouse management systems, but to Glenn's part, well, I might have some data in my time and attendance system. I have data in my warehouse management system. I might have data in my, fleet management system on my lift trucks. Well, getting that data, kind of rationalized into one place so I can start to make some of these decisions sounds easy. Wasn't that easy? And so a lot of people weren't doing that. They're trying to pull things into spreadsheets, and so things weren't getting done. And it was really because of the architectures of some of our legacy systems, whether that was Datex or the other 100 WMSs I used to cover at Gartner. It was a real challenge. And I think we're seeing some of the modern architectures. We talk about API structures. Well, it's not just have an API. An API is a nice thing, but there's a vendor here a couple years ago. They had this great thing. They had a big plexiglass thing, and they said, well, this is an API spec. Okay, well, that's kind of hard to go through that API spec. So just because you have an API doesn't solve the problem. It's like, do you have all the other pieces that go around that to really simplify it? But that's the first step in getting here is, do I have some sort of structure so I can build that universal data model so I can then layer on top of all the nice things that I want to do with things like TACT or other systems like that.
That's a great point. It's not just, again, the API, it's the foundation, the platform, and the structure around that API. So we're going to build on this with a slightly different example, because obviously not everything is as large of an implementation like TACT could be. Sometimes it's really the smaller day-to-day stuff that creates the most friction, right? So death by 1,000 paper cuts. So Hill, you mentioned to me previously, we've chatted before about something that you've done around labeling, right? And there's a good story there, if you don't mind sharing that with the audience.
Yeah, like I said, our customers are near and dear to our hearts, and they're the reason why we exist. And so whenever they have a requirement on their end to make that their business requires to be successful with ultimately their end customers, we can't be a hindrance to that, because if we are, they'll go elsewhere. And it can be as big as turning 100 trucks in a week, or as small as like, hey, you have to have a label that is compliant with the retailer's specifications and the EDI transactions that go along with it. And as I'm sure people in this audience have experienced, they all like it a little bit different, and you have to have a way of building it. And so, we piecemealed it over time of having a Walmart compliant label, a Trader Joe's compliant label, a Costco compliant label, and it was very hard to develop and then very hard to change. But recently we've kind of now taken a different approach, enabled by our WMS setup, which allows us to operate in a low-code environment and have a studio where we can make all these changes again in-house in a very controlled, flexible way for our customer. And so just recently we had one of our long-standing 30-year customers they don't require a label for anything else but HEB loads, so 4 or 5 loads a week. And 2 or 3 years ago, if we needed this, we would have to submit a ticket to Datex, request a development project, get a scope done. That would take a few weeks. Get thrown into like one of their sprints. That would take another few weeks. They'd give us the first test back. It'd be wrong, so we'd have to go back for feedback. That'd take another few weeks. And it'll probably cost me 10 or 12 grand to get a product 6 weeks after I actually needed it. Whereas now, because of this low-code studio, we can now make these changes within 30 minutes and have it deployed. And so, I got a panic phone call from our senior person to this customer being like, hey, we kind of missed the boat here. We need this next week. Like, our first load's going to HEB. We're going to get fined without it. And we're like, yeah, no problem. We got this. And within 30 minutes, we had made that code change and had it deployed and taken care of that customer. And that's just what we found. That's a requirement of our services now. And the expectation from our customers is they have all of these nuances they need now, and not 6 or 12 weeks from now with a bunch of added costs.
Glenn, would you agree? I mean, is that something you see that's typical?
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that any type of software that you're leveraging to either run, support, optimize your operation, the challenge is that folks have, whether it's Datex or TACT or any software vendor, the challenges you have at contract signature are going to be very, very different than the challenges and needs that you have 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And I think it speaks to what I kind of think is the key point here today, which is the expectation, the need. It is no longer a nice to have. Your technology has to be able to evolve with your operation, and that means that they've got to be able to move from the legacy approach that you were talking about to the new approach that allows you to more effectively and quickly implement solutions that solve the changing set of needs.
Yeah, so just because you have, let's say, less flexible environments doesn't mean that the need is not there, right? You still have, great products like TACT and some other ones. I mean, look around you, you have 3 huge halls filled with potential solutions that you can leverage. But again, if the system is not conducive to that, it ends up really holding you back a little bit.
Well, if I can add one.
Yeah, Dwight.
There's probably a lot of people here that have legacy code and do in-house development and say, well, we've been doing that for the last 30 years. Probably have been doing that for the last 30 years. And anybody that's been doing that for the last 30 years knows that every time you do one of those changes, it's like the Jenga game. If you've ever done the Jenga game, every time you pull something out, it gets more and more fragile. You did that one change, you do the next change, you do the next change. And you don't know which change it is, but at one point in time, you're going to do one too many changes, it's all going to collapse. So even homegrown code, you can say, oh, we want to do that label, we could do that in-house. And all of a sudden, one day, the whole system crashes. With the modern architectures, now we're talking about Datex, I mean, I'll be honest, they're doing some cool things, there's some other people doing some cool things, is we can do that in a cloud environment. This is one of the other things in cloud. Not every cloud environment allows you to do this in a cloud environment. You need the right kind of technical environment because, again, cloud, you're sharing a lot of infrastructure, is you can do that without breaking the code. That's the most important thing, is you can now have this flexibility, maintain all the advantages of clouds, of upgrades and things of that, but still have this flexibility. And it's not going to be fragile. And that's why we are very encouraged by what we saw around these low-code, no-code environments, is we can add this kind of agility to our applications without all of the downside that we've had. I mean, I was in the warehouse management business back in the 80s. We were writing code back then. It was COBOL. That's how old I am. It was COBOL. But we knew that, at some point in time, the whole house of cards, even if it was vendor-based. Now, I love that he said it was $10,000. How many people here have third-party vendors and you're going, $10,000? I wish that I only paid $10,000. I know there's a lot of vendors that are going, they don't do anything for $10,000. They don't show up for under $50,000. But I mean, you knew even if it was vendor-based customization, at some point in time, you were worried that one more change, the whole house of cards is going to fall down. So that's the beauty of these new kind of architectures. We had a certain amount of built-in flexibility, but it would only go so far. I had rules and parameters they could change, but they weren't going to write a label. They weren't going to do some of these other things. So that's what's so encouraging about these new architectures.
So Dwight, to Hill, to piggyback off what you said in terms of the house of cards or the Jenga. So I'm about the obvious. So what is it about what Hill said that it maybe is a warning sign or a red flag? Is that a red flag of what the pattern could be with your system? I mean, or is that just kind of like it took longer than it needed to be, maybe it's more complex and we'll just figure it out later?
Well, the first, not a red flag, I'm going to answer a question you didn't ask. But when we were talking to clients when I was at Gartner, is if I went back 10 years ago, technical architecture was fairly far down the list of evaluation criteria. What we started to see over the last couple of years is that functionality was always top of the list. Do I have the functionality? But the reality in WMS was that, it's such a mature category. Most of the WMSs had most of the functionality people wanted. So technical architecture became much bigger criteria. And that was something that people were going, hey, do I have those kind of tools in my application, particularly in the 3PL space? I think everybody has that need, but particularly in the 3PL space, because you don't know what your next customer is going to want. And then, he doesn't know what his next customer is going to want. So that need for that kind of flexibility is even amplified in the 3PL space. So looking for those kind of tools that say, wait a second, I now have that, and I can own some of that, and that the vendor gives that up to you, that gives you that control to do that. And then particularly since most WMSs today are cloud-based, is having that capability in a cloud environment, because you can't depend on the vendor for all of that kind of stuff.
Hill, you were going to add something?
Yeah, I think I described the feeling a few years ago of like the really scary feeling of just getting left behind because everything felt so inflexible and rigid. Like I think that there's a similar feeling right now with just how quickly the world around us is changing, how quick what AI is now offering, the whole economy, but particularly supply chain and WMS. And I think like Dwight made the point that WMS is a mature category, and there's kind of every functionality imaginable out there, right, Dwight? And yet it's still really hard for a lot of us operators to have it be very specific to the use case we need, that is tailored enough to where it truly gives us the insights. And now like that, that bottleneck is gone. Like there's a ton of other risks that come with it, but I think just back to, we have one of our 5 warehouses is a 100,000 square foot warehouse. It has 25 people. We pick roughly 80,000 cases. We're doing single case picks, so it's a direct store distribution program. We do 80,000 case picks a week, so it's not massive. It's not one of these like Amazon style warehouses. It's in the middle of Wisconsin, And my director of operations, within 3 days, used Claude to build a hyper-specific dashboard that shows minute by minute where our bottleneck is in the pick line, all running off the data that we leverage from Datex. We have it go through our data warehouse. We built an app via Claude on it, and now that's running our warehouse way better than anything else could. And that just wasn't even thinkable, a year ago. And now our director of operations, who has a full-time job running 3 warehouses, did it over the weekend in a few days, and it's made that's materially changed how we view our operation.
So we're going to have a chat in particular about AI kind of at the conclusion of this, but that's a key point. But Dwight, Glenn, what Hill's describing in terms of his operations, his challenges, you guys have talked to a lot of WMS operators, right? Dwight, you in particular, 12,000 plus briefings. Glenn, in terms of your career, is this typical, or is this really the kind of an exception maybe, or something unique that Hill is dealing with?
No, I think that folks absolutely are expecting more out of the WMS, and I think it brings up a great question about, what are the different roles of both the systems of record as well as when you want to layer on an intelligence layer or a decision layer. But no, that is incredibly common, if not absolute, in the expectation that things are changing. I need the platform to be able to change with me, and I needed to facilitate all of the things that Hill was talking about, the fear about being left behind. I need my software to be able to constantly iterate with me and open up the doors so that I don't fall behind.
Perfect. Dwight, any add-ons or?
Yeah, it was interesting when you go back 10 years ago when cloud WMS was first starting to come out. And as a Gartner, we had colleagues that did planning systems and everything. And I remember having a conversation with some of my planning colleagues, and they said, how come you do so much customization in warehousing? We don't do any customization in planning system. And I said, well, here's the issue. I said, I'm in a warehouse system, and I'm doing something. I have one task, and I'm doing it 1,000 times a day, 10,000 times a day. I had customers, 250,000 order lines in a day. And you said if I could take that and I could save 10 seconds on 1,000 times a day times 250 days a year, that's a lot of money.
Real savings, yeah.
Or I have a customer that's demanding that I do something. I said, not doing it's not an option. So we saw in some of the first generation cloud systems, they didn't have, you basically had to go to the vendor to get them to do some of this. So a lot of the initial vendors, we'll do that and we'll just build that into our core product. Well, that's not sustainable, because that's how you end up with 47 different pick methodologies that are all variants of the same pick methodology. And now what you want is you want X number of core pick methodologies. You need something special on my own variant. So I think that's been the problem, is that and I think Hill talks about this, is you got to do in warehousing. Mere perfection is almost required, right? If you gotta execute, you gotta execute. And if that requires customization, you gotta require customization. Now, when we talked to a lot of customers, one of the things we did is, like, if you're gonna do customization, we always said, get someone to do a business case on the customization. That's how we saw people bring down customization. If it's cosmetic, maybe you don't need to do that. But if that's 10,000 times a day, do the customization on something like that. But now the beauty of it, you can do it without breaking the system. That's what's great, because what the bad side in the old systems too is that costs me on upgrades.
Yeah.
The average upgrade costs in old systems.
It's disruptive.
$1 million a year, and that's why upgrades are 5 years, and people get behind. And so there's so many advantages if you don't have that problem. So it's absolutely an issue, but not doing it. That's why, in warehousing, it's almost not an option in many cases.
Yeah, and that's
like I said, it's even worse in 3PLs, because, your business is serving your customers. Saying no to a customer is not a good decision. So.
Absolutely. So we're going to kind of pivot, right? Remember I said this is going to be splitting up in 2 parts. So the first one, remember, was Hill being able to extend the platform, right? What the attributes are of the WMS that allows you to do that. So now we're going to pivot a little bit in terms of, is the platform conducive to actually helping you grow your business, going after new opportunity, increasing revenue, and not just in terms of efficiencies by adding on systems like Tact. Now it's being able to expand what you can say yes to in front of your clients. So, Hill, I'm going to kind of bring it back to you for another example here. How did the platform, the one that you have, allow you to grow and say yes to more opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, the platform is now kind of a strategic tool in our business because it makes us so much better operationally, where we can, build a true data-driven operation that's aligned across our entire group. We're also then capturing, fundamentally different insights that we can share with our customers that we're doing based off our performance that show them our true value. And it's not just like, standard industry KPIs. It's like the very specific problems we are solving for them based off their business. And we can capture that data and then share it back with our customers in a true value-centric way. That makes a huge difference. And then we can also just do things that our customers need at a speed that honestly most people can't. And we're a relatively small to mid-sized 3PL, and we compete with the Americolds and Lineages of the world. And one of our big advantages is customers get to talk to me, and I can make decisions extremely quickly. And if we have the technology and the tools to match that, that's a true differentiator in the business. And so we hear that feedback from our customers all the time is our responsiveness and our flexibility compounded with our reliability is a differentiating service within the industry. And our technology can now actually keep up with that, so it's not just sheer will and fighting to keep up with just adding more work. We actually have the tools to scale and win more business and win different types of business because we can now move just as quickly as our commitments require us to.
So it does help you level the playing field, right? The David and Goliath type of story. Glenn, the importance of this to exist now versus before. Are you seeing this as something that's imperative to now have in the operations as far as leverage or ammo?
I do think that the expectation from whether it's Hill's customers, your customers, I think increasingly the expectation is help me gain a competitive edge, right? Whether that is speed to be able to evolve, whether that is show me that you are making a concerted effort to be more efficient and to move my goods through the facility more efficiently. Maybe you're looking for ways to lower the cost of being able to serve me. I think that is absolutely something that is a competitive edge and is becoming a requirement for all technology providers. And sorry, it's not the technology providers, it's Hill, right, that has that need to be able to communicate it as a differentiator when a startup is coming to him and trying to choose between his operation and someone else. I think it does make a difference. I think we're seeing a lot of folks want to talk about the investments that they're making as an actual marketing and securing opportunities approach.
Makes a lot of sense. Dwight, from your point of view, to help the audience, right, because a lot of them are maybe wondering, is this me? How do I know if I'm in this position or not? So what are some key identifiers, right, from what you've seen as far as being able to have the platform help you evolve versus kind of maybe hitting a ceiling? What are some characteristics that they can look for?
I'll give you a couple data points. The average medium complexity warehouse, you're probably making anywhere upwards of 1 million decisions a day in that warehouse. Now, most of those are being made by your warehouse management system. They're not consequential. Your warehouse managers, warehouse supervisors are making anywhere between 70 and 100 consequential decisions today. Oh, that's okay. You know what they're using to do that? Seat of their pants or Excel. That's what they're using today. So now we're starting to see, the warehouse management system is there. Again, we talked earlier on about my ability to get the data out, get them into some format that it can start to make decisions. We'll talk even more about some of the more advanced tools. But that's what we need to, get the data into the hands of the people that are making the decisions in a better format that they can make the decisions because they have to make more consequential decisions faster. McKinsey did a study that they found out that like 60% of people feel they're very inefficient in making decisions and most of their decisions aren't good. So you take all that together, you say, we really need to equip these people with better tools to make better decisions. So I think that really supports what we're trying to do here.
Absolutely. So before we wrap in the last section, we want to talk a little bit about AI as we have a couple more minutes. Hill, any last comments in terms of what you were able to kind of get accomplished, what you were able to go after, maybe concrete example-wise as far as new business that you can now deliver, or should we just kind of move on to AI?
Well, I guess I think we just, I can think of, 2 customers recently where we were able to show them why the pain point that they are having with their current provider we've solved in like 3 different ways, and none of it's data that just comes from our WMS.
Yeah.
Like it's data that comes from our WMS paired with a separate application that's capturing photos, capturing temperatures, capturing accuracy and product quality, and when we piece all that together and can show over time what trends the customer's having with their business that are either costing them extra expenses throughout the supply chain or slowing everything else down. And we're able to actually be a partner in solving those problems that are not strictly warehousing. That's not just moving product in and out. It's helping their business run better. And we can do that because we have the underlying data from our WMS that's extremely easy to pull, then to pair with the data from separate sources. That's helping us build a true picture at scale. Again, it's just all this is doable when you're a massive company with a huge data team. We don't have a data team. We have a 5-person IT team that handles everything. But because of now this architecture that we have with our warehouse management system as the core, but then being able to put all our data into a data warehouse and then the appropriate scalable tools on top of it transforms what we can do, especially as a company our size.
Awesome. Now, one thing you mentioned, I'm not sure if you guys caught this, but he was able to say he offered 3 different options, right? So with a low-code platform, that's really what the platform enables you to do. So at relatively low cost to no cost, you're able to do the experimental process, trial and error, until you can fine-tune whatever process you're looking for. So it's not like, hey, we're going to have to make a decision and we're going to have to put out an analysis and really do an ROI study, because when we're asking our vendor to do this for us, they're charging us 50 grand and we can't make a mistake. We have to know for sure. Whereas a platform that is more conducive to the trial and error, it doesn't cost you anything. So you can try things. If it doesn't work, try something else. And again, it's not up to the vendor to be that bottleneck, right? So it's up to you to really embrace that platform and fine tune it to the way that makes sense for your unique operations.
And I think that's honestly the key point, because the world has kind of just reversed itself, where 2 or 3 years ago it's just like your WMS was so inflexible you couldn't do anything. Now it's like the opposite problem, where there's so many more tools out there. We can go write code within Claude with no real knowledge, but in our world, especially when you're dealing with WMS data, it's this industry was built on traceability and being a system of record, and not being 90% accurate like a good LLM would tell you it is, but being 99.9999% accurate. And so now we run the risk of we're not going to break the whole system, but we might not actually be as accurate as we need to be, or as accurate as a true system of record WMS is, even though we're doing WMS-like functions with our quickly built code or applications or whatever else. And so I think as we evaluate things, we still need the system of record. Like, that hasn't gone away. We still have to have an extremely reliable system of record. But then we also have the ability to move extremely quickly on applications to help our business run better and to grow our business. And we need to bridge the inevitable tension between the two, where you want to move fast and do things really quickly on the one hand, but then also have extreme reliability on the other hand. And I think that's really what, as we think about our partner and what we need out of a WMS, that encapsulates it, is still provide the system of record and the rigidity that creates the accuracy, but then have a way for us to work with it and move as quickly as we want and take advantage of all the tools out there to better run our business and to grow our business.
It is a delicate dance, right? So to be able to be that rigid, not in a negative connotation, but rigid in the fact that it's reliable, it's consistent. That's what you expect out of your WMS, but also to enable you to leverage all of the add-ons and the flexibility that we talked about. So for sure, thanks, Phil. So we have, I think, a couple of minutes as we wind down. So I'm sure something that's on everybody's mind these days. I don't know if you guys heard of the term AI. How many? So AI has been the answer, right? AI is the answer. Now what's the question? Right? So everybody just wants to put in AI because it does cool things. But are we really starting to step back and think, what problem are we trying to solve? So Glenn, I'm going to throw this to you. A lot of TACT is AI-powered, AI-driven. What have you seen in real environments out there in terms of leveraging AI, how effective it is, and so forth?
Yes. Caveat, you were talking to the least technical person on the TAC team. However, I will tell you that there's a word that's been used up here a number of times, decision making. I think 10 years ago, it was great. We've talked about how it's important to be able to get all of this data, make it accessible, make it accurate. It does you no good to go log into any system, go search for a challenge or have to find a problem and then realize that 6 hours ago you needed to move 16 people into packing to be able to meet your goals for today. This is where I think AI initially, and you're going to hear, everybody here should keep track of how many times you hear AI or agents or agentic AI. The real question is, what is it doing for me today? How is it being used? And what is its role in a business that has a lot of human-to-human interaction, right? Rather than throwing more technology between humans, what can it do? And the short answer, it's difficult for me to give short answers. The short answer is, it is incredible at taking access to all of that data and then turning it not into a dashboard, not turning it into something that you have to go hunt through, but turning it into, hey, whether you are in operations or whether you're an engineer or whether you're in finance, what is it that I need to focus on right now? What are the changes and things I should be paying attention to and focusing on right now that are going to functionally improve today, however you define that, whether that is lower cost, higher efficiency. And I know we share a very similar approach to AI with the team at Datex. We're just getting started. I think we need to be cautious. My team certainly is excited about the idea of taking AI from suggesting decisions to automating decisions that would otherwise be out on the floor. And I think there's a bit of a let it sit for a second. It's sort of a measure twice, cut once type of approach before you start automating human decisions. However, it's certainly capable of doing that, but we need to make sure that there's the buy-in and the understanding of what you're asking these technologies to be able to do, and make sure that you implement them in a way that is appropriate for a business that is still, the vast majority of it is about human-to-human interaction, coaching, feedback, decisions throughout the day.
Thanks, Glenn. So in the spirit of time, we're kind of winding down. I want to leave some time for some questions. Dwight, words of wisdom in terms of AI. Are people ready, in your opinion?
What do you mean?
Are people ready for AI? Are people prepared to leverage it correctly, or is there still work to do?
I think the first thing is AI the answer? What's the question? I think you started there. The reality is AI is a toolkit. You know, we use AI as if it's one thing, it's many things. Hey, you have a robot, there's probably AI in it, but that's probably, pattern recognition, machine learning. You're using it user experience. It's an enabler technology. So the question is, what are you trying to do, and what type of AI do you need? Is it an algorithm? Is it generative AI? Is it agentic AI? So I think what people are going to need is what problems are you trying to solve, and is AI the right tool to try to solve that? We're seeing AI in low-code systems where I can actually use AI to code. Yep. I can generate code using AI. So I don't think AI is the end-all. It's an enabler of what other things that I might be trying to do. I think you need to be careful. Gen AI is like the big thing. Just as a caution, I was talking to one client, and they did a simple query, one simple query, cost them $60,000 of compute time that they could have done with a simple algorithm that had zero compute time. So I think we'll find some downside to some of this as well, that we'll say, maybe I'll go back to using a simple algorithm because I don't want to pay AWS $60,000 in compute time.
I think we get enamored with what AI can do, that you lead there instead of really taking a step back and doing what makes more sense, right? Whether it's a simple algorithm or even an Excel spreadsheet can do for you.
Start with the end and then back into what you're trying to solve. Yeah.
Hill, leaving a couple of minutes for closing. Any comments on AI and how you guys are using it today?
Yeah, I think cold storage, 3PL warehousing in particular, is an interesting mix of still requiring a lot of stuff that happens in the physical world that creates value and provides a service, but then also is still part of, you have substantial technology, potentially automation that plays a huge role in it as well. And so we've taken advantage of the ability to write code ourselves by leveraging things like Claude Code and everything else to move quickly and do things we weren't capable of. But then to what Glenn and Dwight both said, we still have a lot of just people in our organization that are making hundreds of decisions a day and have always struggled to help get them the right information they need to make a good decision. We really believe in our people. That's our first value is being people first. We spend a ton of time developing our managers and leaders, and like they all want to make data-driven decisions. And so it's now how do we get them those insights quickly, in a way that is something that an operations manager who's out on the floor, who's in the warehouse, who's doing a million things at once, can then receive that information and then get to the right answer extremely quickly. And that's where we've really found things like Tact to really help us, where we know what the underlying data is, like that's always key, and then B, it produces AI-driven insights that help suggest the right answer to our managers and leaders as they're making these decisions, versus hunting down spreadsheets or whatever else. So we've really seen that use case, and it's awesome. Like it's really exciting when you get to watch an operations manager who's struggled with something for years, like his eyes light up when he can get this information and then immediately go address it and see the results right away. Like it's really cool when it all kind of happens full circle and the speed at which it does.
Some of it really is like magic. Thanks, Hill. So in closing, right? So the theme that we discussed today is that the WMS is not just a system of record anymore. It's really the platform that you will use and leverage moving forward to evolve and grow your business. So it determines how fast you can move, how fast you can integrate, and how much business you can take on, what you can say yes to. So whether it's adding fantastic tools like Tact, or expanding your operation, or even leveraging AI, as we heard, it all comes back to one question: can your platform actually support where you're trying to go as a business or as an operation? So I want to thank our panelists, Hill, Glenn, Dwight, for sharing their unique perspectives. Really appreciate the discussion, gentlemen. Thank you, all of you, for attending. So we'd love your feedback. There's a slide with a QR code, if you don't mind. Anyone? So if any of this resonates with you guys, we'd love to continue the conversation. Please come find Datex. We're in Hall C, which is about 32 miles opposite of here. We're near Theater A in Hall C, so please come by and chat with us. We'd love to, or even after this presentation, we'd love to take questions. Sorry, I don't think we have time to take questions unless anybody has anything pressing. Good. Thanks, guys. All right. Thanks, everybody.